All right, there we go. It's Sharpening the Edge, week 12. Lucas Reimink, who's on the screen. I'm Dennis Fithian. We're ready to pick a bunch of games, including Michigan, Michigan State, the Lions, 3 best bets, a prop, a parlay, and a best bet of the week. Lucas, I know you're locked and loaded and ready to make some selections, right?
Absolutely. I was 8-1 last week, so that was great, almost perfect. The only one that didn't hit was the one that we had together, the Colston Loveland receiving yards total. But 8-1's a great week. Take that anytime you can get it. 49, 41, and 2 now on the season, so looks a lot better than it did last week. Yeah, I'm excited. Getting the last couple weeks here of the season, and then it'll be the bowl season. So we're hitting the crunch time here. It's time to separate, try and get as many wins on the board as we can.
I was really ready to pull the trigger on the one prop of Michigan not throwing an official pass in the second half, but, just didn't have the guts to do it. Like who would have thought? It's not the 70s, but I didn't do that. I do have to tell one story. One that was a good job. It was a dead under in the USC-Oregon game. That's the one where we went against each other. I felt terrible, and I knew it pretty quick looking at the score of that game as it went on. But I was comparing notes with a friend of mine who's been gambling forever, and he watches the show sometimes, and he gave me a text. He's like, "Hey, we got to have talk about this one game." And it was the UCF Oklahoma State game. I said, "Oh yeah, I like Oklahoma State." He's like, "You're dead wrong on that one." I said, "Well, just give me the reasons why." Because I gave him the reasons why I liked Oklahoma State, how they played against Oklahoma, and all that. And he said, "That's that's a suspicious line. That's a funny line." And I said, "That's your reason?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm betting it. I'm taking UCF because that's sometimes the lines when you see them like that, it's too suspicious." And I said, "That's your reasoning for betting it?" "Yeah." And he said, "That's then the crux of his betting strategy all of these years." And he said, "I don't know." He said he wins. Now with that, I bet a bunch of suspicious lines myself, but not going against him. I'm still betting. So I'm betting a bunch of suspicious lines. Do you ever get scared about like, oh, wow, wait a second. That line's too good to be true. So I'm going to go the other way.
No, it's more of like if I see a line that I think smells funny, I just stay away. I don't like jump on the other side because it's really hard for me to just bet on something that I don't like believe personally. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like if you liked Oklahoma State going into it, like I could never bet the other side just because I liked one side. You know what I mean? Like I just can't do that personally. It's just not what I can do. So I'll just stay away from it if I see a funky line.
Yeah, that's the way I do it. All right, let's get to, like we always do, Michigan first. They are taking on Maryland. They won't have their head coach. The line started out at 21 initially, then dropped to 19, and it stayed there all week. Michigan at Maryland. I'll pick this game pretty quick. I looked at this one, and I think that Michigan has a tendency over the years, they've a lot of times they played Indiana, and Indiana's played them a little bit tough. I remember Ohio State, when they played Maryland, it seemed like Maryland played them a little bit tough. I think they both kind of peak ahead. It's natural. Plus, with everything else going around Michigan, I know people think they're just going to come out and smash Maryland. Maybe they will, and I hope they do. But I have to pick the game and tell everybody how I think it's going to go. And I think this is going to be a little bit closer than the 19 points. I have Michigan 27 and Maryland 16. So I would take the 19 points if I was out there telling people what to do. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'm not going to touch the spread. Just don't really have a great feel for number one of how Michigan's going to look like coming off of the emotional win last week against Penn State, and then it's a look ahead spot for Ohio State on deck, like you mentioned. But then, like looking at Maryland, I just don't really like what they have going on as a team either. So I just kind of found myself in a risky situation there. So I'm not going to touch the spread. I will go over the 49.5 here because I think of all the ways that this game can play out, I think the over is the most likely. It's an overmatched Maryland defense. I don't think Michigan's going to have a lot of problems moving the football. And I do think Maryland's offense is one that's built to give Michigan's defense some problems. I think quarterbacks who are experienced and mobile tend to be the toughest to stop. And I think Talia Tagovailoa kind of fits both of those categories. He does have issues with turnovers, but his turnovers can also result in points for Michigan. So that's still kind of like a positive thing if you're rooting for the over. I think Michigan might be a little bit sleepy here in the first half, coming off the big win last week, like I mentioned, and then just kind of not really sure where the spread is. But I do like the over no matter what, so I'll go over that 49.5 there.
Over 49.5. It gets us to Michigan State. They are taking on Indiana in Bloomington. Both teams are 3-7, and the Hoosiers are favored by 3.5. I've hated picking Michigan State all year long. I don't like picking. It was easy picking Washington against them, but most of the games, I have to hold my nose. I don't know what I'm doing. When I do pick State, they never cover. But this time around, Indiana has not been all that impressive. And, with points, it's not like it's the greatest home field advantage. I think Indiana can win it by a field goal. So I'm going to have to take Michigan State in the 3.5 points in this game. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to just go the opposite way, but I have the same feeling as you. This Michigan State team is just so hard to predict what they're going to be, how they're going to look like week in, week out. Like every single week, it could be a week where they just completely fold and quit, and everybody's got their eye on what's next for them, because there's a good chance that it doesn't mean that they all stay in East Lansing. Obviously, the coaching staff probably all looking up for jobs, at least to some degree, in their spare time. The players probably debating entering the portal or not. It's always kind of a question of, is this team going to play hard for the interim coach because they like him? Because a lot of the times that's what happens, is they appoint the interim guy that a lot of the players like, just to kind of galvanize the troops. But then there's also like I don't know if I'll be here next year. Like, do I really want to play hard for this school conundrum? So I'm going to bet Indiana here 3.5, just because I think they're the better team and they're at home. I think they're going to play hard for Tom Allen. Like I mentioned, not really sure that you can say that for MSU. They might, which it's possible, and that's like if you lose this bet, it's because Michigan State is still playing hard. But again, I just really have no confidence that that's going to be the case week in and week out. So I'm going to take Indiana. I got them 27-21, so I'll take them at the 3.5.
Can't argue with a Spartan conundrum. So I hear what you're saying. It gets us to the Lions, who I waited to the very last second last week. It was the line was -3 everywhere, and then lo and behold, right before the game, it was -2, and I took the Lions, and they won by 3, which was magic. This time around, they're hosting the Bears. Bears have a pretty good run defense, and they have Justin Fields, and they had Montez Sweat. So if you just look at the numbers, I think you come away and say, wow, the Lions really have them covered everywhere in this game. But I think the Bears are going to keep – I like the Lions to win this game, and I think the Bears will keep it close within certainly the 7.5. I have the game, the Lions 30 and the Bears 24. So I'll take the Bears in the 7.5.
Yeah, I'm just going to take the over again. I like the totals a lot more this week than I do the spreads. Going to go over the 48 here. Couple reasons. The Lions, from my perspective, they tend to struggle with quarterbacks who have some mobility to them and can also throw the ball downfield. I think Justin Fields kind of fits that. And I think what we saw like the last week and against the Seahawks and the Ravens, Lions secondary has been leaky at times, and they either tend to be really good for a week or really bad for a week. But it seems like, based on what I've been able to gather, that I believe they are more leaky when they have a quarterback who can buy some extra time, gives those receivers time to find the holes in the defense, maybe win a one-on-one if they have another extra second or two. So I still like this Lions offense, though. I think you'll be able to put up points on the Bears and against pretty much anyone. So I got this game 31-24 Lions. So I'll take that over 48 there.
All right, that gets us to our best bets, and I have 3 locked and loaded, so I'll just go with them right now. These are the ones that you might think are tricky. Louisville is on the road, and they're actually getting a point down at the U, and if Louisville wins this, it'll be the first time that they will advance to the ACC title game. Now, I watched Miami and Florida State last week, and the U actually looked pretty good out there, but I also think that they spent everything in their gas tank against Florida State. I like Jeff Brom and what he's doing here, and I'm getting a point. I think that Louisville will win that game, so I'm taking Louisville +1. The other game I'm taking is a team that I have been riding here that has marked really my turnaround this season when I started making some better bets, and that is Arizona, who's -1 at home against Utah. And Utah's got a pretty good defense, but Arizona at home, the way they've been playing, I really think that they're going to win this game, and that is why I am taking the Wildcats at home. They've been my team of the year. Go Arizona. I like their coach, too, down there. Fish and everything. The team that seems this one might be a little bit tricky, Georgia's -10. They're going to Tennessee. I remember last year, now the game was between the hedges. Georgia just thrashed Tennessee. Tennessee didn't have a chance, but Georgia continuously gets better. I like Georgia minus the 10. I saw the team total of 34.5. That's the one I'm going with, over 34.5. And the Bulldogs. Also Arizona, and the other play is Louisville, getting a point down in Florida against the U. Those are my 3 best bets.
Yeah, so speaking about the funky lines like we were talking about earlier, the Louisville Miami one just didn't really make sense to me. Like it opened at +1 for Louisville, moved all the way to -1 for Louisville, so kind of crossed that threshold there. I thought it was weird because I was watching that game as well, Florida State and Miami. They lost their starting quarterback too at the end of the game. Towards the end of the game, it was like a very kind of, I don't know, tragic scene almost, because it was a pretty serious injury and he was crying on the sidelines and stuff, and they had to bring out the cart. And then Tyler Van Dyke is going to take over. He came over in that game. He was like in an interview this week, he was saying, I'm not going to let football define my happiness. So that's never something that you really want to hear from your starting quarterback, because that means you're not playing well and nobody's happy with your performance. But he's going to be the one giving the go there for Miami. So that's interesting that you're jumping on the Louisville one. I just didn't like it enough to bet on it. But I was on the same side you were, if that makes you feel any better.
It does.
As gets to my 3 plays this week, I got 1 over and 2 unders. Like I mentioned, I like the totals this week a lot more. So don't have spreads here in my plays, but I'm going to start with over 50 to 7.5, Oklahoma and BYU. BYU's defense is quite bad. I've watched them a handful of times this year. Dylan Gabriel and the Sooners offense, I think, could score like 40s to mid 40s themselves. So then I just need like 15 to 20 points from BYU. Oklahoma's had some defensive issues pop up this year as well. I think this could be a spot where they might give up a little bit more points than you think, while also putting up a bunch of points themselves. So I like that total. I like the over 57.5 there. I got under 49.5, Ohio State and Minnesota. Mentioned it a few times. Ohio State is just an under team this year. The defense has been really, really good against most of the Big Ten competition. It's a look ahead spot for Ohio State with Michigan next week. I think their offense kind of fully clicked last week for the first time all year against Michigan State. They had the running game going and the pass game going, which is really the first time we've seen that. But it was also Michigan State's defense. The secondary, obviously, Michigan State's had a lot of troubles covering people over the last few seasons. It's a really good receiving core. I think it was kind of just a bad matchup for Michigan State. So even though the offense looked the best it has all year for Ohio State, I think it was more of who they're playing versus like they had some sort of breakthrough or anything like that. The game last week, they put up 38, but it was very quick. They did it very quickly. It ended up 38-3. They still only got to 41 total points in the game. So even if Ohio State's offense kind of jumps off, and they are kind of taking that step that a lot of people thought they would be coming into this year, I'm still not sure that Minnesota can get to double digits here. And I think if Ohio State gets up, I think they're just going to want to run the ball, close this thing out as quickly as they can. I got Ohio State winning 35-7. So I will take that under 49.5 there. And I have another under in the Oregon-Arizona State game. Arizona State's offense has really struggled the last couple of weeks. They scored 3 against Utah and then 7 against UCLA. Oregon, to me, has a similar caliber or defense as those two teams. I don't know if they get to double digits here in this one either. I think 42-10. I think the Ducks kind of cruise in that one, so I like that under in that one as well.
All right, there they are. Over Oklahoma, BYU, under OSU, Minnesota, and also the under in Oregon and Arizona State. Take those plays to the window. All right, we have a prop and parlay and our best bet of the week. Let's get to our props. You might think this one sounds a little crazy, taking J.J. McCarthy over 230.5 yards, but, it's going to be game plan specific how Michigan's going to go after Maryland. I think that they will throw the ball a little bit against the Terps. And, Drew Aller, who we saw last week, threw over 240 yards, or threw exactly, I think, 240 yards against Maryland. I think J.J. will be able to do it. I'm going over 230 J.J. McCarthy against Maryland tomorrow for my prop.
I have the same exact prop as you again.
Wow.
We didn't hit this last week. I also have JJ's over passing yards. Maryland's defense is 32nd nationally in run defense, and they're 44th in pass defense efficiency. So just kind of looking at it there, they're a better team at stopping the run than they are defending the pass. I think given how Michigan closed the game out last week, I mean, it's possible that they do just want to run the ball as much as they can in preparation for the Ohio State game. But I also think it's more likely that they're going to want to go on the other side and kind of jump back into the passing game, make sure that's firing on all cylinders going into Ohio State game. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think JJ, because it is Ohio State next week, I think JJ is probably going to play as much as he possibly can in this game, just because they want to get him prepared for the Ohio State game, want him to be sharp. And he really hasn't played a ton of fourth quarters this entire season. So I think they're going to want him to play all four quarters. Keep him healthy, obviously, but I think they're going to want him to play as much as possible. So I got him going over that 230.5 passing yards as well.
All right. Obviously, I like the sound of your voice there and what you're saying about the over. I'm staying with the same game, and with McCarthy, if he's going to air it out, I'm going to go to two of his best three receiving options. One, Roman Wilson, over 54.5 a couple games ago. I took Roman Wilson, and he got that in the first half. I'm going with him again over, but I'm parlaying it with Colston Loveland over 33.5. Put those two together, you say, ooh, that's a little bit tricky to get both of those. Well, you get plus 240, so you get rewarded if it happens, and I think that can happen. That's why I'm going with it. Plus 240, Roman over 54.5, Loveland over 33.5, plus 240 as my parlay of the week.
Nice. I like that as well. Kind of similar lines of thinking there. I'm going to steal the anytime touchdown parlay again. Hit it last week. I'm going to go back to it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you had Marvin Harrison Jr. in yours last week, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah. So I got him this week. I was looking it up. Since the Penn State game, he's got 8 touchdowns in those last 5 games. I think he's going to keep it rolling against the weaker Golden Gopher secondary. I got Marvin Harrison to score in that one. I got Bucky Irving to score against Arizona State. He's running back for Oregon. Oregon's a big favorite. He's a really good running back for them. He's got one of the best offensive lines in the country blocking for him. And Arizona State defense has had trouble stopping the better offenses they faced all season, really. So I think he'll be able to get into the end zone. And I got Roman Wilson scoring against Maryland. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the passing game, taking the week off pretty much last week, I think they're going to want to get it back on track this week to make sure that they're prepared for next week. It's by far the most risky leg of this parlay, but I think it is bounce back performance for the passing game. Statistically, they're really good passing the football. They're third nationally in passing efficiency. And like I mentioned, Maryland is 44th nationally in passing team efficiency on defense. So I think you can exploit that a little bit if you're Michigan there. Add those three together, it's plus 261 for the anytime touchdown parlay. Bucky Irving against Arizona State, Marvin Harrison Jr. against Minnesota, and Roman Wilson against Maryland.
I can see all of it happening. He's bringing up bad memories because last week, I had Blake Corum just like you. That was a really easy one. He got in pretty quick, and Marvin Harrison. But I had Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, who was minus 750 for an anytime touchdown. Like out of anyone, I mean, you would have thought that he would have scored. And, of course, he didn't. They didn't score any touchdowns. Probably if they would have scored, he would have been the guy. But he got shut out, so I ended up losing that one, which was pretty distasteful for me. But people aren't coming here to hear about my bad bets. They want the good bets, and I'm going to my lock of the week. This is one of those where you look at it and you say, I don't know. Why would you take this one? This looks a little suspicious. Washington is undefeated, and they're at Oregon State, and they're +1. Now, Washington's wide receivers are awesome. Dunze, is that his name? That guy's a great wide receiver, and Penix can really air it out. Oregon State, I know they can run the ball a little bit, and the Pac-12, if you look at the history of the last few years, they eat their own and knock their teams out of the undefeated ranks. But, man, Washington's a better team than Oregon State, and this line is fishy to me. I think Washington should be like a 4 or 5, 6 point favorite, but I'm jumping on them. I'm obviously taking the point. This is my lock of the week, taking Washington to stay undefeated.
That's interesting. That's a lot of people are thinking this could be the week Washington goes down. But
yeah, that's what they're thinking.
I know that's what it almost feels a little too trendy to me to say like Oregon State's going to win that game and they're favored. So it's like I'm kind of with you. Like when just looking at that line seems off to me as well. So I didn't want to touch it because I thought it seemed off.
Fishy.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go.
Fishy.
Yeah, my lock of the week. I'm taking the Georgia Bulldogs again. I bet on the Georgia game like 3 of the last 4 weeks. I've hit all 3 of them. I just believe Georgia and Tennessee are 2 teams going in opposite directions. I think Georgia is continuing to get better as the season goes on. Tennessee is kind of doing the opposite. They're going down as the season goes on. Georgia, I really believe they're playing the best they have all year. Couple of reasons they've had Marius Mims is their right or left tackle. He's one of the best tackles in the country. He finally played his first game like 2 weeks ago, and last week he played about half the game. Sounds like he's going to be full go for this game. So it'll be only like his 3rd game of the year. I think that Georgia offensive line looks a lot better when he is in there. Obviously, he's their best tackle, one of the best tackles in the country. It makes sense. And I think it kind of trends with what we've seen from Georgia's offense as well, taking that running game to another level that we haven't seen previously. Tennessee last week, they went on the road, got killed by Missouri. Now they got the Georgia Bulldogs coming into town. I just don't see how that's going to go any better for them, to be quite honest with you. I think this Georgia team is not going to be phased by the Neyland Stadium crowd. I got Georgia winning 35-17, so I'll gladly take them at that 10.5. That's my lock of the week.
I'm right there with you. Georgia, I looked at the number. They get into the red zone over 50% of the time, and that's number 1 in the country. So every other drive, they're getting into the red zone. Tennessee, they're going to have to score a lot of points, and I don't really see them scoring a lot of points. So I'm right there with you with Georgia about, the trajectory is one way and Tennessee's going the other way, especially after their game last week against Missouri. So I'm right there with you. All right, next week, all those rivalry games going to be really exciting, making the selections. Lucas, best of luck. And what I've seen from you the last few weeks, you won't need it. We'll talk with you again next week.
Yeah, hopefully it continues.
Yeah, that's right.